There is an invisible force that guides us through the meetings and partings of life. Sometimes, a connection feels so deep, so inexplicably intense, that everything else fades away, except that presence. It feels as if the universe itself conspires to bring you together, even when everything seems to push you apart. Coincidences, unexpected reunions, sensations that defy logic. Is it just attraction? Is it longing? Or is it something deeper, something ancestral that pulses within the most unconscious layers of the psyche? When someone is truly meaningful to our inner journey, certain signs keep repeating themselves. It is not about idealized romance, but about a call to transformation. What these signs reveal is not only about the other, it is about you. If you believe that true connections don't happen by chance, comment, "I am ready to recognize the signs of my inner path," and take this moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your support in the comments. That strengthens this space of awareness and allows us to continue sharing content like this. When someone seems to return to our lives insistently, like an echo that will not fade, what is at play may not just be a love connection, but a profound process of the psyche. According to Jung, human relationships are symbolic mirrors that reveal what is hidden within us. It is no accident that certain encounters seem to carry an archetypal weight. They activate unconscious forces that challenge our ego and place us before our own evolution. Jung spoke of projection as one of the first stages of emotional bonds. Onto the other, we project aspects of ourselves we have not yet recognized, both luminous and shadowy. When we feel that someone is our destiny, it may mean that person is showing us parts of ourselves still waiting to be integrated. If the signs keep reappearing, dreams, recurring memories, synchronicities, the unconscious may be using that figure to provoke an inner awakening. The shadow, another fundamental concept, represents all that has been repressed or neglected within us. Relationships that touch us deeply almost always enter this territory. They confront us with what we fear, avoid, or do not understand. A true soulmate is not one who simply completes us, but one who activates healing processes even when that brings pain. The journey of individuation, central to analytical psychology, is the process of becoming who we truly are. Along this path, we encounter figures who catalyze transformation. They are archetypal presences that compel us to confront our inner feminine and masculine, anima and animus, promoting balance and integration. Thus, the repetition of signs is not destiny's game, but the soul's call for something within us to finally awaken. The repetition of signs in our emotional experiences is not accidental, nor merely a reflection of conscious desires. In Jung's analytical psychology, this phenomenon can be understood as the living expression of the collective unconscious, a psychic field shared by all humanity, filled with symbols and archetypes shaping our deepest experiences. When someone persistently returns to our lives, through memories, unexpected reunions, coincidences, or dreams, it is not merely an emotional bond manifesting, but an archetypal content rising into consciousness with the purpose of transforming us. The collective unconscious does not communicate directly, but symbolically. It speaks through recurring patterns, universal images, and sensations we often cannot name. The figure of a possible soulmate may embody an archetype, the lover, the healer, the spiritual companion, that activates dormant dimensions within us. When these archetypes become conscious through a specific person, we begin to notice signs that insist on appearing. It is not magic or superstition, but the symbolic language of the unconscious, seeking our attention and engagement. These signs may arise in many ways: a song that plays at the exact moment, a name repeating in unlikely places, a dream recurring with unusual intensity. Each manifestation carries a coded message pointing to something that must be seen, understood, or integrated. Jung called this the activation of complexes, when emotionally charged content emerges demanding elaboration. The other, in this case, serves as a channel through which the collective unconscious expresses itself, reflecting our inner gaps, repressed desires, unhealed wounds. The persistence of such signs may cause confusion, for the ego seeks rational explanations, yet the unconscious does not yield to common logic. It works through images, metaphors, and intense feelings. When we stand before someone who represents more than a simple human connection, the collective unconscious, stirs to catch our attention, for that figure may be tied to a greater psychic process, the journey towards self-integration. This journey demands courage, because the encounter with the one who affects us deeply is also the encounter with parts of ourselves long hidden. The other becomes the archetypal mirror of what is most essential and often forgotten within us. That is why repeating signs are not about the other, but about our own soul in motion. They are manifestations of an inner process, a summons to see beyond appearances and dive into what Jung called psychic reality. Furthermore, the collective unconscious moves through time and space in non-linear ways. This means signs may appear retroactively, as if something from the past finally makes sense, or anticipatorily, as omens preparing us for what lies ahead. The constant return of someone, even only in thoughts or dreams, may be the unconscious alerting us to unfinished lessons, unresolved wounds, or opportunities for inner growth. This perspective radically changes how we deal with such connections. Instead of clinging to possession or idealization of the other, we begin to see the relationship as a vehicle for self-knowledge. The focus shifts from the other's behavior to what their presence awakens within us. Signs stop being mere romantic curiosities and become inner compasses pointing toward where we must walk. Therefore, when the signs keep coming, when the universe seems to weave coincidences around someone, it is essential to ask, what does this figure represent to me? What aspect of my psyche is it revealing? At what stage of my journey am I being called to grow? The collective unconscious does not waste energy. When it manifests, it is because something essential must surface, and repetition is its most insistent way of ensuring we pay attention. When certain encounters or situations seem to go beyond mere accident, something deeper is at work. Carl Jung named this phenomenon synchronicity, the simultaneous occurrence of two or more events, which, though not causally linked, carry symbolic meaning for the one experiencing them. In intense emotional connections, especially those that evoke the feeling of the other being a soulmate, synchronicities do not just appear, they persist. They mark the experience with a quality of mystery, as if destiny itself were carefully designing each step, even when logic finds no explanation. Synchronicities are more than curious coincidences. They represent the intersection between the inner world of the psyche and the outer world of reality. For Jung, these moments occur when there is intense psychic activation, usually linked to a powerful archetype emerging from the collective unconscious. When someone stirs deep emotions within us, even briefly, that moving psychic energy can shape reality symbolically, creating events that fit with unsettling precision. It is not that the universe is sending direct messages, but that our psyche is so aligned with unconscious contents that the outer world reflects this alignment through meaningful events. That is why many report impossible encounters or the unexpected return of someone with whom they felt a special bond, a message at the wrong time, a reunion in an unfamiliar city, a memory arising in both at once, though separated by distance. All are examples of synchronicity. When such episodes repeat around the same person, it signals that the connection is not only emotional or rational, but deeply intertwined with the symbolic movements of the unconscious. This experience can be enchanting, but also destabilizing. The ego, used to controlling, planning, and explaining everything rationally, is confronted with something beyond control. Synchronicity pulls us from the surface into the soul's complexity. Questions then arise. Why this person? Why now? What is the universe trying to show? And more deeply, what is my soul trying to experience through this encounter? The most common mistake is to interpret synchronicities as external confirmations that the other is the chosen one or the missing half. Jung warned of this danger. When the ego appropriates symbolic experience, it turns the sacred into fantasy, and the path of self-knowledge into cycles of idealization and suffering. The true role of synchronicity is not to feed illusions, but to reveal inner truths. The right question is not, is this person my destiny? But, what part of me is being called to awaken through this connection? Synchronicities do not point to the other, but to the dynamic of the relationship, and even more to what it activates in our individuation process. They signal something in motion, a shift of phase, a rupture with old patterns, an opportunity to integrate the shadow or connect with the self. The other may be the channel of this transformation, but never the final goal. They are the mirror, where our soul sees itself clearly for the first time, and the meaning of synchronicity is always to guide us back to ourselves. Thus, when unexplainable signs keep manifesting around someone, it is not a romantic script written by the gods, but a profound call to look within. The frequency and intensity of synchronicities show us that the archetype activated is strong, and this requires responsibility. Jung said the symbols of the unconscious are alive, and when we do not respect them, they can dominate us. The same applies to these experiences. If not understood with consciousness, they confuse, deceive, and trap us in cycles of emotional repetition. Instead of seeking external confirmation, the invitation is to turn inward. Why does this connection stay alive within me? What wound does it touch? What forgotten part does it awaken? What aspect of my inner feminine or masculine needs to be recognized? By answering these questions, the meaning of synchronicity is revealed not as a promise of union, but as a portal to transformation. Therefore, the role of meaningful chance in deep connections is not to prove the other is the one, but to break superficiality. When the universe speaks through symbols, it is up to us to listen with the soul, and perhaps by doing so, we will discover that the true soulmate is not the one before us, but the one who helps us find the most authentic part of ourselves. Few human experiences reveal as much about ourselves as encountering someone who touches us deeply. When a connection feels beyond reason, when the other's presence triggers intense, inexplicable, or even contradictory emotions, we face a psychological phenomenon far greater than mere affinity. The other becomes a mirror. In Jung's view, the people who affect us most, whether through love, pain, or obsession, are those who reflect our unconscious contents. They act as living instruments of the soul, showing us what has yet to be integrated into our psyche. And the more intense the connection, the stronger the mirror. Jung introduced the concept of shadow to describe everything repressed, denied, or forgotten within us. The shadow is not necessarily negative. It represents parts of our personality that do not fit the ego's molds, rejected through fear, shame, or social inadequacy. When we meet someone who attracts us viscerally, it is common that they carry, through projection, aspects of our own shadow. We admire what we lack the courage to be. We love what we repress. We reject what we cannot bear to acknowledge. Thus, the relationship becomes a symbolic stage where we enact our inner conflicts and potentials. In a connection perceived as of the soul, this dynamic intensifies. The person seems to know exactly how to activate our most primal emotions, our fears of abandonment, rejection, inadequacy, but also our highest hopes, our longing for fusion and transcendence. They become a living symbol, charged with psychic projections, and for that reason exert such fascination. We are not merely relating to the real other, but to an inner image filled with archetypal energy. They may embody our anima, the unconscious feminine in a man, or our animus, the unconscious masculine in a woman. These archetypes shape how we love and seek wholeness. By projecting these unconscious aspects onto the other, we begin, often unconsciously, a process of individuation. The relationship forces us to look within, even as we initially try to change or understand the other. Over time, we realize everything we admire or resent in them also exists within us, latent or repressed. They only made visible what was hidden. In this sense, the relationship is not the end, but the means, a mirror of the soul reflecting our fragmentation, but also pointing to our potential wholeness. The problem arises when we refuse to see the mirror and believe the other is the cause of all we feel. This creates emotional dependence, idealization, or aversion. But when we understand the symbolic role of that presence, we open space for deep transformation. The other ceases to be an idol or an enemy and becomes a teacher, not because they know more than us, but because they involuntarily revealed what we needed to see. As Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. The mirror's function also applies to the self, the organizing center of the psyche, what we truly are beyond the ego. The other, by activating deep contents, can connect us to the self, revealing our vocation, purpose, or essential wound. Some people enter our lives and, even briefly, awaken in us a feeling of reunion, as if reminding us of something forgotten. This feeling is not illusion. It is the soul recognizing its direction, its thirst for wholeness. The other becomes a bridge to access this broader, truer dimension of ourselves. Yet maturity is needed to sustain this process. The mirror shows not only what we wish to see, it reveals light and shadow, strength and fragility, beauty and pain. At times, the relationship compels us to face old traumas, destructive patterns, or even the existential void we try to avoid. The impulse may be to flee or to cling obsessively to the projected image. Neither path leads to real transformation. The way proposed by Jung is awareness, recognizing projections, embracing the shadow, listening to the self, and allowing the other to play their symbolic role without burdening them with unrealistic expectations. When someone returns to our lives repeatedly, or lingers in our thoughts even after the relationship ends, perhaps what seeks continuity is not the relationship itself, but the process it activated. The other is a fragment of the mirror, but the full reflection is ours. And the more we look at it with attention and courage, the more whole we become. Ultimately, this is the highest function of deep connections, not to complete us, but to reveal us, not to save us, but to awaken us. Many people spend their lives seeking the perfect connection, the ideal relationship, someone who finally brings meaning and wholeness. However, according to Carl Jung, before recognizing a genuine bond with another being, one must undergo a much more demanding path: individuation. This is the process by which an individual truly becomes themselves, not just a repetition of family, social, or unconscious patterns, but an authentic expression of inner wholeness. Only from this state of psychic integrity can one truly recognize a soul bond, rather than a projection disguised as love. Individuation is not a romantic ideal. It requires confronting the shadow, letting go of the ego's masks, integrating inner opposites, the feminine and masculine, instinct and reason, conscious and unconscious. In this process, one is called to descend into the depths of the soul to recover forgotten fragments of the self, and this inevitably transforms how we relate. Connections cease to be attempts to fill a void and become experiences of sharing and growth. The other is no longer a savior, but a companion in the crossing. Throughout life, we meet many who activate intense projections. They seem special, essential, destined, and perhaps they are, but not in the way we imagine. Many of these connections have the symbolic role of accelerating individuation. They force us to see what was hidden: patterns of self-sabotage, childhood wounds, unresolved fears. The relationship, instead of refuge, becomes a field of tension and learning. And when we can hold that tension without fleeing or idealizing, something within us transforms. A true soul bond does not happen between two halves completing each other, but between two whole individuals who recognize one another. This recognition does not arise merely from affinity, but from deep resonance between each one's processes. It is as if the other had walked similar inner roads, faced similar pains, discovered truths close to ours. There is a communion beyond words, felt in the soul. And still, this bond can only be perceived clearly by those who have already braved the trials of self-knowledge. Without this, even an authentic bond may be smothered by unconscious projections. It is common to confuse emotional intensity with spiritual connection. Yet a relationship based on projection, even accompanied by signs and synchronicities, may be only a disguised repetition of old patterns. Individuation helps us discern. It gives us the ability to observe our impulses, recognize our idealizations, and welcome our needs without placing them on the other. From this new inner place, we can perceive whether a connection is rooted in the soul or merely in the desire to escape. Jung affirmed that every true human encounter has the potential to transform us, but few have the courage to sustain that transformation. Many abandon the process midway, seeking safer, more predictable relationships that do not challenge the ego. Others lose themselves in obsession, believing the other is the sole source of meaning in their lives. In both cases, individuation is interrupted. Only those who continue, even through suffering and uncertainty, reach the soul's depth and recognize clearly when they are before a true bond. Individuation also teaches us that to love is not to merge with the other, but to see them with clarity. And clarity is only possible when we have already met ourselves. A soul bond, when genuine, does not create confusion, manipulation, or dependence. It can be challenging, yes, because it continues to mirror us and provoke growth, but it is sustained by respect, freedom, and truth. The other is loved not for what they represent, but for who they are. There is no longer the need to mold them to our unconscious expectations, because we have learned to handle our own lacks more consciously. In the end, the repetition of signs and the constant return of the same person may actually be insistent invitations from the soul to advance in individuation. While we do not answer this call, we will keep seeking in the other what is missing in us. But when we finally dive into this process of self-discovery, we begin to see everything differently. We come to understand that true love begins within, and that we can only love deeply when we no longer need the other to survive, but only to share. Recognizing a genuine soul bond is not a matter of emotional intensity or frequency of signs, but of psychic maturity. Individuation prepares us for this. It gives us the right eyes to see, the right heart to feel, and the right soul to sustain. Then the signs gain new meaning, not as external promises, but as internal reflections of an encounter that finally became possible, meeting the other through meeting the self. Some connections transcend time, logic, even physical presence. They remain alive within us like echoes refusing to fade. But when we look closer, we see these echoes are not just about the other. They are calls from our own soul. Each repeated sign, each inexplicable coincidence, each persistent memory is an invitation to awareness. When we stop seeking answers only outside and begin to listen to what beats within, we understand it is not just about finding someone, but about finding ourselves. Carl Jung taught that the true encounter is always a journey of integration. Recognizing a soul bond is possible, yes, but only when we have had the courage to dive into the shadows, face the mirrors, and accept the call of individuation. The other may be a precious key in this process, but never the door. The door is within us. If this content spoke to you on a deeper level, if something awoke or made sense, subscribe to the channel. Here we share reflections that do not just inform, but transform. And if you want to continue this journey, watch now the video appearing on your screen. It is the next step in your inner crossing. The soul always knows the way, and the signs keep coming. You only need to learn how to listen,